Welcome in. It is the Holy Grail BCJ podcast right here on BearcatJournal.com. I'm Chad Brendel. He's Dave Simone. We got a special guest on the way here shortly, but we're live, Dave.
What do I do?
Just the same thing you've always done.
Except shake my hands.
Except now people can see.
I think you and I are better off in the audio medium than the visual.
That's probably fair. But here we are. It is the Holy Grail BCJ podcast, the start of a new era, my friend.
Very excited.
Yeah, I can tell. The excitement is palpable.
It's it's exuding out of me.
All right. Well, as we wait on our guest, I guess let's get your initial. It happened. Like it this is real, Dave. The Bearcats are in the playoffs. They're playing Alabama. You get to go to Dallas.
Very happy about that.
That's all you got? Are you clamming up because we're live, Dave?
No, I'm just trying to I mean, we have a month to go before this game, and not quite a month, 3 weeks, but
long time.
A long time. You know, usually when you have this long to go before your bowl game, you're playing in Birmingham.
Right.
This time, a little bit different circumstances, a little bit different environment, but I mean, I said on I guess it was Monday on Twitter, like, I don't know how we're supposed to make it to New Year's Eve. Like, what are we supposed to talk about? What are all the fans like? I don't think the excitement is going to wear off, but you're going to kind of get to the point where the excitement from winning the conference and going undefeated and getting in the playoff wears off, and yet you're still like a week and a half away from the game. So you're very antsy that the game is still 10 days away or so. So I'm dreading that part when we're like the week of Christmas and we still have 10 days before the game. Not looking forward to that feeling. Our
guest has arrived.
Hey.
Hi, buddy.
Hi, Mo.
What's going on, guys? How we doing?
How are you?
We're testing out our new setup here.
I like it.
We're live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Hi, everybody.
We are joined now, our special guest for the night, because this is something Dave and I talked about. We're going to have to be guest heavy for a couple weeks here because I'm not talking about Alabama yet.
Yeah,
that can't happen. So tonight, special guest, none other than Mo Egger from ESPN 1530 and 700 WLW.
It's interesting. Hey, guys, it's interesting because Taryn Blandon, my producer, we just had that conversation yesterday where he's like, all right, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I know everybody wants to talk about the Alabama game. I don't really think there's a ton to say, and we have a lot of shows between now and then. So we're just sort of going to have to sort of pick our spots because I don't necessarily think the themes are going to change between now and New Year's Eve, right? Like, there's only so many different ways to say, God, the Bearcats are going to have to play perfect and get kind of lucky to win this game. So I feel you. I feel what you guys are talking about.
David?
Well, I wanted to have Mo on, as most people that would be listening to this know. Do you prefer the midday or drive time cliche sports talk radio show host?
I go afternoon host, but
afternoon host.
Yeah.
Okay, so afternoon host 15:30.
You're what, the number 14 afternoon drive, mid-market afternoon drive host in the country.
Is that where I placed? I thought I moved up. I thought it was 11th.
Okay, you might. That's right. It was 11th because
Don't move up too high. Then they'll start expecting things from you.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to stay just sort of barely. You want to make the top. What is it? Top 20? Is it top 20? I don't even know. But I think I was 11th. I think I was like just outside the top 10, which is, I believe, where you want to be.
But
that was on the back of 5 unpaid minutes in 2020.
It was Barrett Sports Media. I guess their 2021 rankings are coming out soon.
Segment of the year 2025 unpaid minutes.
That's right. Absolutely. Trust me, that got me through. That got me through months and months and months without sports. Trust me. It was like, every day I would sit down and go, 3:45, Chad's coming on. That'll be something. And then we'll just sort of go from there. So it was a godsend.
I wanted to have you on, obviously, because you cover the team, you talk about the team on a daily basis, you see sports as a whole, but also just the fact of not making any bones about that you are a true UC fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of want to start off, and these are kind of like maybe a silly question. I hate to talk about question that you hear sometimes, but just like 3 minutes to go in the game, you're working obviously, but like, what are you thinking watching the game? What thoughts are you having? Are you thinking of it in a total fan perspective that time? And is it hard to kind of do what you need to do? Or are you still able to do both?
You're thinking as a fan, but you're thinking through the filter of a fan. What am I going to say on the post-game show? Because Dan Horde, who is the best college football, professional football, and college basketball play-by-play man there is on that broadcast, and he is going to rise to the moment. So throughout the afternoon and evening, I was thinking, like, if this happens, Dan's call is going to be iconic, and it was. And so then, all right, what can I add? And so I'm just sort of processing everything through the filter of a fan. How am I going to convey what I'm seeing, and how am I going to communicate what I'm feeling? Because what I was feeling was this combination of euphoria and disbelief. Because I don't care who you are, man. You could have spent the last 3 months certain that this team was going to go undefeated and that they were going to find themselves in the college football playoff in some way, shape, or form. You could have believed it the entire time. And yet, when it was abundantly clear that game was over, when the Bearcats got the football back to pretty much cinch it, I still think it was surreal for you, and because it certainly was for me. So I'm watching this scene unfold, but I'm also I thought about two different things. One is talked about all the time, which is, and we've all done it. Rooted for that team when they felt like a Cincinnati sports afterthought. The 90s, various parts of the 2000s, for some back in the 80s and even beyond. But I remember I started thinking about the last game at the old Nippert Stadium, which was 2013. They lost to Louisville. Teddy Bridgewater just was awesome that night. It was I think it was a Thursday night football game, and it was the last Keg of Nails game, and it was also the last time they were going to play Louisville, and they were entering this era of the American Athletic Conference, which that was the first year of it, which it represented this huge unknown. And I just remember the feeling that night of, well, what's this going to be like moving forward? The good times are over. And yeah, they may be pretty good, but they're done being relevant, because even that first year in 2013, there was, they're playing Louisville and Tuberville's first year, and it's all sort of new. And I remember that night there just being this sense of just disappointment and frustration and uncertainty. And if I would have said that night that within the next decade, in the newly formed college football playoff, UC is going to be one of the 4 teams, and they'll do it on the shoulders of an unbeaten record. They'll do it with an uber popular head coach who will be concluding his 5th season. I don't think anybody would have believed me that night. So I was thinking about that, processing what I was seeing, and then just trying to come up with a way to do the post-game show in a way that I think reflected what I was feeling, which I would think for those who heard it, first of all, the stars of that show while I hosted are still Dan and Jim. And we sent Jim down onto the field, and he was talking with players and getting their real-time reactions. He was having to remind some of them, you're on the radio live, so please use a filter. That was much appreciated by me, certainly. But you're just sort of, you're talking to an audience of Bearcat fans, and you want them to know how important this is to you, how much it means to you, and how much you know it means to them. And so I was watching all of that, if that makes sense, sort of through that filter. But along with all that, I couldn't wait to get off the air and go let loose and really enjoy it. And God knows I did.
Going into the game itself, I listened to you and Tony on Friday, and jokingly, I'm like, is this a bit? Like, are they legit worried about Houston? I couldn't, and I know it wasn't a bit, but like you and I, and like I didn't see it the same way at all that you guys did. What was it going in that you felt would end up being closer than it ended up being?
Living in Cincinnati.
Well, no, I just mean from like the actual.
Oh, I'm telling you, that's living in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't subscribe to that theory. So
I think for me it was, mechanically I was a little bit worried. Okay, if they can't get a pass rush on Clayton Tune, they're going to have some guys who get open in the very, very early moments of that game. Even when they got some pressure on him, he made some really nice plays and put himself in a position to throw. And they, I even put on Twitter in the first quarter, it felt like they had 14 guys on offense. So I was a little bit worried about that, but I thought there was a stretch during the season, and I've talked to some of the players who all refute this, but you could see them feeling the weight, wearing the weight of expectation. And I think we made too big of a deal all season long about how many points they won by, or margin of victory, or style points, or how did they look, or did they cover the spread? And what the committee did with them all year long would reflect as much. But I do think there were times during the season where you could just sense they're feeling the weight of this just a little bit. We would reference it during the broadcast. So I worried a little bit about that. But I think you did hear Tony and I both say, first of all, from a gambling standpoint, I think 10.5 points is high for any championship game. It also opens up the back door. And I mean, late in the game, I'm going, they're going to do this. They're going to lose by 8, and it's going to be awesome. And they're going to storm the field. And then those holding Cincinnati minus 10.5 tickets are going to go to bed angry. But it less about Houston and more about just, it's really hard to go undefeated, man. And the sort of always expect the worst sports fan in you is like, all right, here it is. Probably all they have to do is win the game. This is obviously before we knew the Oklahoma State outcome. Probably all they have to do is win the game, and boy, they're in. We have nobody to blame. You can't blame the committee. You can't blame the system. You can't blame Gary Barta. You can't blame, whoever. How are they going to screw it up? And I unfortunately, so many of us are wired that way that you couldn't avoid that. I will say this, though. I'm guessing I felt differently at halftime than everybody else because there was this real nervous tension in the air at the half, right? I even said on the air, the Bearcats are 30 minutes away from the college football playoff. And I could almost imagine the audience as I said that going, dude, we're up by a point. Like, what are you talking about? That's the kind of thing you say when it's, 28 zip. But I felt like at the half, they had taken Houston's best punch because for their first 3 possessions, again, it's like there's always somebody uncovered and they can't get to the quarterback, and they scored 1 touchdown. They had 13 points. They were down by a point. And so I kind of felt like, you know what? They took Houston's best shot offensively. They're getting the ball to start the second half. This home crowd has mattered. It's going to matter even more in the second half. If they can just get some points to start the half, this team's going to be fine. And they got the touchdown. The pass interference call obviously helped. when Joel DeBlanco had the interception leading up to the 28-13 score, I felt like the game was over. Now, I'm sure I was different than everybody else who was like, watch the clock, or God, how are they going to screw it up now? But at 14-13, I sort of felt like, yeah, you know what? Boy, Houston looked really good at times. The Bearcats have missed a field goal. They're up by a point. At some point, this defense is going to get a turnover. They're going to get consecutive stops, and this team's going to be okay, and they're at home. So I'm guessing if I would have canvassed most Bearcat fans, maybe not you guys, but if I would have canvassed most Bearcat fans at halftime, they would have said, like, dude, this isn't good. I don't like how this is going. I felt pretty confident because things didn't go great in the first half, and they were still winning.
I did too, just from the sense of like what you said was they ran their whatever it is, 15, 20 scripted plays. And then you kind of saw what happened once UC was able to make some adjustments or see what Houston was trying to do with putting Nathaniel down in the backfield and motioning him out. I mean, that's not something that they'd really done all year. So, it took them, I think it took them a little bit of time to figure that element out. And, stopping their run game, allowed them to kind of pin their ears back and generate 8 sacks. But yeah, I think it's just the cumulative effect of like, they weren't going to lose that game at home. The crowd wasn't gonna, even like you said, up 1 at half, I felt like, okay, like Houston moved the ball pretty successfully for the majority of the first half and still only came away with 13 points. So are they going to do that again in the second half and finish those drives with touchdowns? Because UC was going to score. Like in the first half, the vaunted Houston pass rush wasn't there. And I think a lot of that was generated off of the miserable offensive teams they played this season. So moving from that to Sunday, did you have any trepidation of like their like as the morning went on and people were at Notre Dame and Baylor, and was any part of you like, are they really good? Could they jump Baylor over us? Like, or no. Did you feel confident that UC was going to get in?
I felt with almost 100% certainty that they were going to get in, and whatever trepidation might have been there was just my own natural paranoia about pretty much everything. And it's funny because I was on the air Sunday morning before the Bengals game from Tin Roof, and a buddy of mine was there who is not a Bearcat fan, and he was kind of needling me. He's like, well, why would they have somebody at Baylor? And I said, they had somebody at Cincinnati last year. And when that show came on last year, we knew the Bearcats were not going to the college football playoff, but they had somebody there in large part because they had somebody covering the game the previous night. That's a TV show. And the coverage of that really started at 9 a.m.
They had a lot of time to fill.
They had a lot of time.
That they pretty much knew were going to be picked.
It's funny. I went from Tin Roof to the Holy Grail for different commitments, and it's like the same people talking about the same thing. And, each panelist is given their top 4, and I'm like, it's kind of like us with the Alabama game. Like, what else is there to say? But they had to create some dimension of suspense, right? So let's put Coley Harvey in South Bend, and let's put, I think it was Jen Latta at Baylor, and let's give the illusion. Even like Coley Harvey, one of his reports, because they turned the sound on at the Grail, he's like, look, reality is set in here at Notre Dame. They know they're not getting in. I'm paraphrasing him here. And I'm like, dude, you're probably not supposed to say that. You're supposed to pretend like, yeah, there's a chance. I think right. So that part of it, I just thought was it's a TV show. They're creating drama, and I get it. It wasn't really that hard to figure out. And as much distrust of the committee exists, for as much distrust of the committee may exist among all of us, simply look at it. They were 4th, nobody behind them won, and Baylor wasn't going to leapfrog them after Cincinnati beat a ranked team, even if that game came at home. And we're up by one point by 22 points, and frankly should have been up by 29 points because that touchdown shouldn't have been taken away. There was nothing that you could have said or done or any sort of metric you could have put in front of me. I even saw some people that I know who are huge Notre Dame fans who are expressing hope that Notre Dame could get in. And even on Saturday night / Sunday morning, they were resigned to the fact that, yeah, we're not getting in and we shouldn't. And so doubt never crept in. I mean, I was, like everybody else, wondering, where are they going to play? And is there a chance Michigan's ranked number 1? And then what would that do if that's the case to Cincinnati? Is there any chance Georgia falls to 4? That I thought was worth talking about, but there was no logical way. And I know the committee is often illogical. There was no logical way based on history, because there's never been a 2-loss team, based on where the rankings were, based on what Cincinnati did, and based on the way the committee had treated the Bearcats since the first week of rankings. There was nothing that would make any reasonable person think that Cincinnati's name wasn't going to show up on that screen as one of the 4 teams in the college football playoff. That didn't lessen the euphoria for most of us when we saw it. I mean, that to me was the coolest part, right? Like that when you're it's not the same animal, but in the NCAA tournament, most of us know if our team's going to make it. When they do, it's still pretty cool. And then we start immediately bitching about the matchup. But when Cincinnati popped up, that the lack of suspense didn't lessen that moment for me. In fact, the lack of suspense maybe made it sweeter, because I didn't have to experience this sigh of relief, because I think most of us thought, all right, Oklahoma State's going to win, and Saturday night's going to be uneasy, and Sunday morning is going to be uneasy, and it's going to be unbearable waiting to find out if they got in. Instead, the wait was more of a celebration.
I have to stop the party here for a second, and just I want to see Mo and Dave's reaction on this. Cincinnati just offered a new wide receiver out of Louisiana who recently decommitted from LSU. His name.
Oh, did they offer Dakotas?
They offered Dakotas Crawford.
Yes.
Dakotas? We're going to have a guy named Dakotas?
Spelled DACOLDEST.
Dakotas.
He Dakotas.
Oh, man. Oh man, that is awesome.
And he's good too. Like Tennessee's after him, Florida's after him.
Yeah, Cincinnati just offered Dakotas. We've had some great all-name team.
Can he get like a Moreline House NIL deal?
Yeah, Dakotas, Holy Grail.
Yeah,
it's Dakotas.
That's fantastic.
Love it.
That's fantastic.
So good. All right, back to your regularly scheduled conversation.
So
I want to ask Mo and see where you're at on this compared to me getting Alabama, because my take is, if you're going to bust up the party, right? If you're going to break through the ceiling. Like, forget Michigan, forget Georgia. Let's see where we're at. Let's see what we got. Maybe it's ugly. Maybe they get blown out. Guess what? Every losing team in the semifinals pretty much gets blown out. I don't care. I want to see, where do we stack up with Alabama.
Their program has been the gold standard for the last 12 years in this sport. They're the evil empire. They're the modern college football dynasty. They have the greatest coach of all time. All those things. Let's see how they stack up. And if they get smoked, that certainly won't invalidate anything that Cincinnati has done, no more so than it invalidated Ryan Day's program when they were hammered by him last year in the national championship game. We've all sort of fought back against the notion that, well, why would they even want to make it? And it's like, yeah, well, okay, fine. They get blown out in the college football playoff. They're going to be in great company, because Oklahoma's been there, and Notre Dame has been there, and Ohio State's been there, and Michigan State's been there. Alabama itself, frankly, has been there. Clemson's been there. So yeah, you might get blown out. So what? I've often equated it to a lottery ticket, man. Give me the lottery ticket. And if it cashes, awesome. And if it doesn't, okay. Right. That's how it's supposed to be.
It's a lottery ticket that only has 3 other people with the ticket.
Yeah, right. So yeah, let's do it. Let's stack up against Alabama and see how it goes. And I think the really fun part for me, at least, is I asked this on the air today. Who's going to be rooting against Cincinnati? Right?
Alabama, the SEC.
Kentucky fans.
SEC.
But I mean, like, is the
no, not all the SEC. Some of them.
Is the parochialism of the SEC such that Alabama's been kicking your ass for 12 years, right? running roughshod over you.
Mean the incestualism.
All right, incestualism, fine. Is that to the degree that Alabama has been kicking your ass for 12 years? So now let's watch them run roughshod over Cincinnati, or let's see them lose to the first ever Group of 5 school. That's going to do nothing to diminish the stature of the SEC, nor should. Like, I guess what I don't understand about the SEC guy is, does that guy feel attacked? Like, does that guy believe there's anybody out there who's like, yeah, the SEC isn't the best? We all understand it's the best. There are some years where it's maybe not as good. There are some years where it's clearly superior. But yes, that is the best college football conference. It's going to get even better and deeper with Oklahoma. I don't really drag Texas into the conversation because, frankly, for most of my life, Texas hasn't been that relevant. But nonetheless, or I should say for most of my adult life. But okay, so what are they fighting against? Is there really a legion of people who are like, oh, you know what? The SEC's not that. Everybody knows they're good. So I guess for me, it's like Alabama has been kicking your ass for all these years. Is it going to be more enjoyable for you, more validating of your program to watch them beat Cincinnati? Or wouldn't it be kind of fun to be able to point your finger at Alabama and say, you lost to Cincinnati? I don't know. I mean, to me, perhaps outside the SEC, this is more applicable, but I feel like we saw it last year in the college football playoff. The championship game had its lowest rating ever, and these were two mammoth programs. I think there was such fatigue among casual college football fans and college football fans who aren't from, the traditional hotspots of college football, that there was a thirst for something new. And granted, to a degree, we've gotten it, certainly with Michigan, but we're definitely getting it here with Cincinnati. And so if you were experiencing fatigue of the same old programs, Alabama embodies that more than anybody, right? Less so Clemson, less so Ohio State, but yeah, those programs are in that conversation too. But Alabama is, I think, what a lot of these really casual college football fans were growing tired of. Aren't those people going to be gung-ho about watching Cincinnati? Not even like Wisconsin or Ohio State or Louisville or Duke. I mean, I'm just randomly mentioning schools here. Wouldn't you just throw all your support behind Cincinnati and going, okay, we wanted new blood. Now we get a chance to watch some new blood beat Alabama in what would be the biggest upset in the history of the college football playoff. I don't know who that's not affiliated directly with Alabama would be rooting for that.
I don't either. I just know that, like you talked about fatigue, a Georgia-Alabama game will do terribly for that exact reason. Like, people outside of the SEC country just aren't interested in that anymore. The numbers, I mean, I heard of the thing today driving around. The opening playoffs did around 25 million views, and they've been down in the, I want to say, like 15 range, 18 range the last couple of years. Like, and yes, our fan base as a whole is not like a Alabama, Ohio State. It's going to carry from that standpoint. But like, is anybody west of the Rockies going to really turn in to watch another Georgia Alabama game or another, two teams that they've seen? Georgia hasn't. I mean, they're actually new blood when you really think about it. But just going back to our original thing, like, I absolutely want to play Alabama, and it doesn't have anything to do with the result. Like, I just want to play Alabama.
Yeah.
Like, they're the gold standard. And even if this isn't the prototypical Alabama year, especially compared to last year, like, it doesn't matter. Like, they stack 5 stars on top of 4 stars. Like, so it's still will be a monumental challenge, but I just want to see it. Like, and it might go terribly, but that doesn't diminish the whole season, the season as a whole, and it doesn't change my view of who I want to play just because we might have a better chance to beat Michigan or Georgia.
It's not apples to apples, but in 2015 in the NCAA tournament, I wanted to play Kentucky. I wanted to play Kentucky and Louisville, right? I mean, and so that was an undefeated team they were never going to lose to a 16 team. So, but more when we were talking about, okay, where could the Bearcats be seated? God, they could be in the 8-9 game. Oh, okay, well, then they're going to put them against Kentucky. Dude, let's do it, right? And I said the same thing at the time. It's a lottery ticket. If you beat Kentucky in the second round and hand them their first loss of the season, we'll build Larry Davis a statue, and it will alter the trajectory of the program in all likelihood. And if they lose, okay, that team's probably going to go to the Final Four and has a really good chance to win the national championship. They didn't win the title and they lost in the semifinal. That to me doesn't necessarily diminish how good that team was or how historically relevant that team was, but give me that chance over any other number one seed in the tournament. I feel the exact same way about this. I would have been elated to get a chance to play Michigan. That would have been fine. But yeah, they're the gold standard. Get a shot to see how you perform against the gold standard. It's Alabama football. UC is probably never going to get a chance to play Alabama in a venue that's not Bryant-Denny Stadium. So
I was actually at the last time they played Alabama in 1990 in Legion Field, and it did not go well.
Right.
But
right. So let's do it.
That's kind of what I mean, like, and that's kind of my mentality a lot of times with like scheduling and things. It's you always hear like the well, you don't want to schedule too hard because you like, or in a bowl game you might lose. I'm like, yeah, but you also might win.
Yeah,
and the benefits of winning far outweigh, especially in this case. I mean, the benefits of winning this game far outweigh the negatives of losing in any fashion, whether it's 50-0 or 28-27. Like, if you win the game, you beat Alabama, and you're going to the national championship. There is no thing on the other end of losing that I'd be like worried about. I'd be like, I just want just use the winning element of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes folks are a little bit too concerned about what people they don't know in social media are going to say. And I couldn't care less about that. Right. So I could not agree more. This is, it's the kind of opportunity to use a word that was applied to the UC Notre Dame game. It's the kind of opportunity. If we found out Cincinnati is going to get a chance to go to Tuscaloosa and play a regular season game, who would say no to that? Who wouldn't want that? And yeah, usually you're going to lose, but fine, let's do it. See how it goes. You never know, as cliche and as sort of hokey as that sounds. So give me this shot on a huge stage with immense stakes on a neutral field. Let's do it. And if it doesn't turn out good, it doesn't turn out good. I don't know that there's anybody who has been emotionally invested in this team this year that would walk away from a decisive Alabama win and go, well, you know what? The last 4 months were for naught. And boy, I tell you what, it
basically means nothing.
Right. Yeah. Boy, you know what? That was a lot of fun that Saturday night they beat Houston, but you know what? Not really. It's ruined the memory for me. Like, I view it as a tremendous opportunity.
We're not players, we're not on the staff, so I feel like we can have this mentality. Like, I'm not going to say like I'm just there to have fun, but I'm kind of just there to have fun. Like,
right.
I'm not going into this game like I would a regular season game or the Notre Dame game or even the conference championship game. And I don't expect the players and coach, they're going to go in expecting and doing everything they can to win. And I'm not trying to diminish that, but like, I still like, I get it. And all of our fans get it. And people that listen to this get it. And I know you get it, but like, I still go back to August when I said that they would go 13-0 and Chad would say, do you think they'll make the playoff? And I'd say, tell me on December 5th and I'll give you my reaction, because so many things had to happen throughout the entire year. I didn't watch a single second of the selection shows every Tuesday because I was like, it doesn't matter. The things that we need to happen, we're not to the finish line yet. So like, I don't want to have like we're just happy to be here, but like when you understand literally all the things that had to happen to even get into this position, from a fan's perspective, I don't know how I'm supposed to like not feel that way.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned some of the other games on the schedule. The Notre Dame game for me was the one where it's like, all right, you got to win this one. This is the one that if you want to kind of enter the conversation, if you want to be taken seriously, you're favored, right? I mean, to me, where the whole thing turned was when the Vegas line came out and you're like, yep, Vegas is saying Cincinnati should win that game. And my favorite thing all week long was when people would say to me, why are they favored? And I would go,
because they're better.
Because they're the better team. Really? And I'm like, yeah, they're the better team. But that put, and again, I'm not a player, I'm not a coach. And I thought Luke handled the whole week extraordinarily well. And the team looked very well prepared and played great and won the game. But that was the one that I was nervous for, because you're not getting that shot again. And even if you get a shot in a game like that, are you getting a shot in a game like that in which, boy, if we win this, we've cleared this major hurdle, and now we could start talking about making the college football playoff. And I think so many of us, I could speak for myself here, were reluctant to embrace college football playoff discussion because you got to beat Notre Dame first. And to a lesser degree, Indiana. I think it was clear as we got closer to the season, the Indiana game was going to be winnable. And obviously the way the season turned out, but it was the Notre Dame game, right? All right.
Well, sure.
It's going to be 2 top 10 teams. And even like add to it all the Brian Kelly it just was like, all right, at some point you get an opportunity like this, you got to take advantage. And if you don't, you know what? It's going to be thrown back in your face. That to me was the holy crap, they got to win this football game. And then the way it played out, it's 17-0. Now you can't blow it. When they won that one, huge sigh of relief, because then, as hard as it is, not to invalidate what they did over the final 9 games, but it was feasible. Like, you could go week to week and go, okay, they're going to be favored in every game. They could still play better than they have, and they'll take some punches, they'll take some challenges. They'll have a game that comes down to maybe the final possession or two, but they're well equipped to handle it. They're going to be fine. And now that they did it, it's an overused term, house money. Let's do it. Let's see. The game for me that they had to win to really change the conversation about this program, especially because they lost the Georgia game, was the Notre Dame game, and they did it definitively. I think the cool thing about it was it wasn't fluky. It was, they should have won by more than they did. They led from the outset, outplayed them, dominated them, won it kind of going away, left no doubt whatsoever. That to me was the game. This one on December the 31st, I will hope like hell they can pull off the upset. I'm sure if the game is close, I'll twist myself into knots. But if it's not, and they take a decisive L, then they take a decisive L. And awesome season. Let's look ahead to 2022.
Do you take anything from the notion of, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, and I agree, like, they did a great job all year kind of deflecting the whole style points and needing to win and how you look, and the conference isn't very good and they're only beating Tulane by this and Navy by that. And now that they're in, is there anything to the idea of like flipping that on its head where they, whether it was on their own or they felt it from the outside, the pressure to just keep winning and keep doing it convincingly, and now that you're in, is all of that gone and you play a different way? Or is that just kind of like do you think that's just kind of like a sports talk, Twitter, television type thing?
I don't know that it is, because when this team was at its best, to use their own phrase, it felt like they just let it fly, right? Like it felt,
they certainly
to me,
played the best all year against whoever they felt were the better teams.
Right. Like, so who did they look their best against? SMU, much of the Houston game, UCF, Notre Dame. I think we would argue those were their best 4 opponents, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
So those were those. I know they played great against Temple, but Temple stinks.
Temple's terrible.
But the 4 games that had long stretches where I was like, dude, came in those 4 games. Not in the entirety of all 4 of those games. Certainly there were moments of concern against Houston. But though, and even to a degree, ECU and ECU's okay. And they, as much as people worried about the first quarter, it was 21-3, and you knew ECU wasn't going to score against. That game was over. So they played their best in games like that, and it felt like they let it all hang out. Let's go. Let's open things up. And so I would like to think there's a belief that they, from a game planning perspective, they kind of have to play that way. Also a little bit more mechanically, you're not going to beat Alabama kicking field goals. So let's let it hang out on third down.
That's the thing is everybody gives like Ole Miss went in there and got whooped, but Lane did the things that he knew he had to do to win,
Right.
and they just all went wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But he never stopped, and that's the mentality you have to have. Like, yeah, it might go wrong, and we might get killed, but these are the things we have to do to give ourselves a chance and hope that they go right. Because, like you said, you're not beating them kicking field goals. You're not beating them, playing any sort of conservative style, and that might backfire on you. But that's the chance you have to take if you actually think you go in there and get the win.
Yeah, let it all hang out. And when this team was at its best, it's when they just decided to sort of air it out a little bit offensively. When they were at their tightest was for a stretch against Tulane, for a stretch against Navy, for a stretch against Tulsa, for a stretch against USF. Although I think that was more about them just turning the football over than anything else, and giving up a fluky 98-yard touchdown drive and a fluky 75-yard touchdown on a slant. But nonetheless, when they were at there's no reason to be tight in this game. And if you are, Alabama's going to destroy you. They're there. They've arrived. The committee is not going to kick them out. I mean, there's no.
They could get bumped with a good loss, though.
Yeah, sure, right?
So they move up.
There's no God. What if we lose? ... hanging over this game. I know it's more complex than that from the standpoint of how do you beat Alabama. I get that. But yeah, I think there is something to that. When this team was at its best was when they played their best opponents. Is Alabama better than all those opponents? There's no human alive that would say that they're not. But yeah, I think there's a validity to the idea that when this team really looked the part, and when they really looked the part, they looked like they were playing without a care in the world, and they were fast and free and whatever. That came against their better opponents, and maybe they can channel that into the best opponent they've played so far this year on New Year's Eve.
With comments now, we should incorporate the comments, and I think this is relevant to what we're talking about. Luke Herzog points out Cincinnati has 8 players in Mel Kiper's positional top 10 rankings. Bama has 9, but John Mechie's out. So they also have 8 players in the game, the same as Cincinnati. Cincinnati has the talent to win this game. I guess
my one question on that is, because juniors haven't declared, is that only seniors?
I think it's people that have declared.
So, like Jameson Williams, I mean, he wouldn't be listed. Bryce Young wouldn't be listed then.
I think Sauce is listed, so maybe they are.
Sauce can go, but Bryce Young can't, and neither can Jameson Williams.
True, yeah.
So, but I mean, I get it, but it's like there's still a little bit of variance there.
In a buzzkill, Dave.
Hey, I'm you know me. I don't want to be like the UCF guys. That's my goal in life. Don't be like the UCF guys. Be fair to all sides.
I mean, I'm really interested in the first 4 possessions of this game. I'll go back. Nobody wants to do it. Different circumstances, different stakes. The Sugar Bowl in 2009, 2 Florida possessions into that game, ball game over. And really 4 possessions in, because after Florida goes up 9-zip, UC goes, I think 3 and out, ball game over. It didn't matter. And so and then go back to last year, Peach Bowl. You kind of felt like after a quarter and a half, like, all right, Cincinnati can play with these guys. This team's going to be okay. They took the lead right before half. And, the James Hudson injury ejection was in that sort of sequence late in the first half. But you kind of walked away from the first, not even the first half, but just from the first couple of possessions going, all right, they haven't blown them out yet. They look physically like they can kind of go toe-to-toe with these guys. This isn't going to be easy, but yeah, all right, here. So you can do it one of 2 ways against Alabama. You can put yourself behind the 8 ball early, and that team gets going, and whatever talent disparity there is becomes abundantly clear, and now you're chasing a deficit. Or you can kind of stand toe-to-toe early, and all right, 3-4 possessions in, they haven't beaten us yet. Here we go. Let's do it. And, and maybe then it's a ball game. Who knows? I'm really interested, though, in how that plays out. Because it's like Ohio State versus Michigan State, right? None of us really believed Michigan State was going to beat Ohio State, despite the numbers next to their names.
We didn't think it was going to be 100-0.
Right. But I mean, 5 possessions in, dude, what are we doing here? I
remember you're like, these teams aren't even in the same hemisphere.
Right. What are we doing here? A game over. Doesn't matter what Michigan State does. They've been hit by a freight train. There's no chance they're coming back, especially in Columbus. Avoid that. And then let's match up man versus man and let's go. And if that's the case, yeah, I've said to a few different people around the country, like, this is a really neat success story. There's two things you have to realize about it. Number one, it's not come from nowhere. This team was ranked in the top 10 before the season. They did win every game last year. They were good in 2019. They were good in 2018. So it's been a slow build, but this isn't just sort of some overnight success story. Also, this isn't some mangy group of upstarts. There are certainly guys who have outperformed their recruiting ranking or recruiting hype, and they've brought in some guys from other programs, but this is a team with dudes. This is a team with guys whose name are going to be called on during the draft. This is a team with guys that Power 5 programs would want, and in some cases Power 5 programs had, and in some cases Power 5 programs recruited. This is not some ragtag group of lovable guys who, oh boy, they've banded together and won 13 games and now they're going to take their shot. This is not that. This is a team of guys who are high-end college football players, maybe not as many top to bottom as Alabama. And I'm sure if we started to go Alabama's 2s versus Cincinnati's 2s and Alabama's 3s versus Cincinnati's 3s, well, then the matchup gets more and more favorable. But it's like the Notre Dame conversation, right? Why are they favored? Because they have a better team. Because they got a team of just guys. They don't have a lot of holes up and down the roster. Like, they got guys who are going to play on Sunday. And so that to me applies here. Does Alabama have better players, better talent, better team? Yes, I would say that unequivocally. But I think there's this notion around the country that Cincinnati is lining up these ragtag group of kids. And no, they're lining up with a bunch of guys who are going to have their names called in this year's draft and in subsequent drafts.
Mo, did you ever think this program would get to a point where they would have 8 guys on one team, like 8 guys in one draft that are going to be like, we're going to be busy watching the draft this year. It's not going to be a spectator sport. Like, we're going to have work to do.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, we're I think most of us, and certainly you're going to have guys like this, but we're used to only watching the draft on Saturday because maybe Mike Warren's name is going to be called, that sort of thing. And, look, Josiah DeGuara we thought was going to go early in 2020, and he did. But now I'm going to watch the draft on Thursday night, and where's Sauce going to go? I don't want to say I never thought I'd see that, but that's going to be special. That's going to be cool. Dez is, possibly going to go on Thursday night. We're
going to be really busy Friday potentially.
Yeah, really. So, right. So we're going to be watching the draft from a Bearcat perspective through a different filter than usual, which is, all right, somebody going to find their way to a team on Saturday. And then we spend a lot of time with like college free agency, and we're still going to do that. But by the time we do that, there's going to be a whole bunch of Bearcat players who have had their name called either by Roger Goodell or somebody else.
Are you at all a little bummed that you'll be covering the game from a media perspective and not a true fan perspective?
I've been doing this so long. My media perspective is different than the normal media perspective because I'm on the UC broadcast team, which has always made life somewhat tricky for me because you have to be objective when you talk about them and when you write about them, and some at UC have understood that and others have not, but I think I've done a pretty good job of that. But being with Dan and Jim for all these years, and when we've had Tony and Tommy G and Scott Springer, whoever we've had, we're the Bearcat broadcast crew. We're supposed to root for the Bearcats. We're not supposed to be completely biased homers, and God knows Dan and Jim certainly aren't, and I don't really think I am either. So it's different than if I was at a different outlet and I wasn't the kind of person who wore my emotions on my sleeve. I think anybody who's paid attention to me, who I root for. I don't make any bones about it. I would like to think that folks who have paid attention to anything I've done on air or other outlets would tell you when that program's warranted criticism, I've given it to them. I would think that Tommy Tuberville and Butch Jones and Mick Cronin would agree with that. I think John Cunningham himself might tell you that that's fair, but I've always tried to do it fairly. I've always tried to do it in an entertaining manner, but I've always done it from the standpoint of I want this program to win. I want them to succeed. So I feel like I'm going to be there as a fan. Had you been in our radio booth Saturday night, had you been in our radio booth in South Bend, you would have seen three people who were as happy as anybody in the stands and anybody rushing onto the field. So, yeah, is there a part of me that wishes I could scream and yell and drink beer and let loose expletives while the game is unfolding? Sure, but I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't trade my perspective for anything.
Instead, you throw pins.
That's what I was going to say. Was I wish this one game you could sit behind me like the old Fifth Third days.
That's right.
And we could have some Mo After Dark stories about the basketball games back then.
Yeah. It's why I do try to go to one road basketball game, because it's funny, when they played at Pauley Pavilion, I went as a fan, and it was like, oh yeah, this is I forgot. This is great. This is awesome. Yeah, this is the best. So yeah, it took me back to those days. But no, I've been doing it long enough that I've figured out a way to control it. It's sometimes easier than other. Honestly, I'll tell you, Twitter kind of helps because I'll tweet from the booth during the game, and when things are going great, I think you can tell, and when things aren't going so well, it can be a little bit of an outlet. But no, I mean, I think it's going to be awesome that there are likely to be so many Bearcat fans who are there, and it's going to be, I think for most people, a multi-day experience. And I've been to a lot of UC bowl games, some of which have been well attended, some of which have been very sparsely attended, where, it's like in Birmingham 2 years ago, where nobody wanted to be. I remember the night before the game, there was a basketball game being played, and I'm thinking like, oh, I'll post up at this spot and there'll be a bunch of Bearcat fans there. And it's like, yep, nope, nobody came to Birmingham. So this will be different, and that will be awesome.
I guess,
Mo, you guys need a sideline reporter, Sup?
Yeah. Chad will. I won't. I certainly will.
No, Dave will never give up.
I'm debating whether I can try to sneak my confetti cannons into Jerry World. But
have you heard the confetti cannon thing, Mo?
I have.
Thoughts on Dave firing? Can you see them from the booth when Dave fires off the confetti cannon?
I don't think so.
We cannot. No,
they stay underneath. But obviously, season is not over.
No.
But just right now, what is something or some things that are you like that you will think back on, or that you think back on right now about, like, I don't know if they're plays, games, people, just like, what is your memory of this season as it's still going, but has reached this point of 13-0 and making the playoff? Like
a play?
No, just like something that sticks out to you. If is there anything is it the Notre Dame experience? Is it you guys in the booth after when the Houston game looked official, watching everybody run out on the field, just anything like that?
So I'll give you two that are pretty, beyond just the scene on Saturday night. Hearing "Let's Go Bearcats" ring throughout Notre Dame Stadium was as my first ever Notre Dame experience, and everything about it was awesome, and including the people and the fans, because I stayed in South Bend and hung out with friends after the game. It was awesome, but hearing "Let's Go Bearcats" ring throughout the stadium during the game is something that I won't forget. This is going to sound somewhat hokey. I go down on Tuesdays, and I request a player or two for the pregame show. And this season in particular, getting a chance to talk with these players about the season, about the careers they've had, about their part in this program's turnaround has been very rewarding for me. And, you know, I've had very few negative experiences with the guys that I've talked to, but this group of guys, I've said this, I think I've said this publicly, but I've told people privately, like, they got guys who are really worth rooting for, that are really polite, really nice, really, you know, sit down with them and here's how we're going to do it. And they take it seriously. They ask if hey, was I okay? That for me personally has been, and I know that's an opportunity that's unique to just a handful of us. I understand that, but I've been around athletes and people who I rooted for, and I thought, I don't really love rooting for that person. These guys too. I can't tell you how many times I've said, like, to the sports information director, Zach Stipe, like, wow, he was great. He was good. Or how many times I've said, God, I usually only use 4 minutes. I'm going to use all 6 because the player was that good. And you know, how many times I've said to Dan and Jim, like, hey, this week we have this guy and you're really going to like it. That has been really, really cool for me personally. It's made this season even better because it's more fun to root for a team when you feel like the people you're rooting for are worth emotionally investing in. And these guys have done that. And so that for me is something I'm going to remember. That to me is something. That and the dude from Tuscaloosa tweeting me, telling me he would send me cigars if the Bearcats made the playoff back in October, and me holding on to it to retweet right after the game.
Do
you
get to pick the cigars, or is he getting them
it's from that Tuscaloosa cigar mansion, right?
Oh, well, that's
so
nice.
This guy started following me. He's nice. I've gone back and forth with him because he's a big Reds fan, but he tweeted me on October the 30th, and he's like, if UC makes the playoff, I'll send you cigars, pal. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to save that. And so about 15 minutes after the game on Saturday,
Here's
I retweeted
address,
it.
pal.
I wrote I'm like, hey, here's the address. Thanks. And he's like, boy, you hung on to that one. So I'm waiting for my cigars. That might be the absolute best. That might be the best moment. That actually, if those cigars arrive, that might actually be the pinnacle.
Speaking of wagers, you know, you guys have,
it's the Let's Go Bearcats.
we have interactive audio. I don't want to speak over
it. We're getting used to all of our new bells and whistles still.
But speaking of wagers, we know you like to place 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
If in August I'd have told you Oklahoma, USC, Notre Dame, LSU, and Florida were going to open, what kind of odds could I have gotten on Luke Fickell will not take any of those jobs?
It's a great question, isn't it? It's a great question.
And what does that say? I mean, I've been around him, very, very casual conversations, nothing. You've been around him, you know, obviously our fans and members know Chad's inner workings with him, but just from your standpoint, what does that say? And just what are some of the things that says to you in getting to know him and how he operates?
Well, my dealings with him have always been pleasant. You know, I noticed a difference in him this year. You know, last year was weird because you can never really be around him, and the same for the entire team. But I went to higher ground this year because I always get him on before the season starts, and Ryan Coslin was still there, and he's like, "Why don't you come to higher ground and do it?" And okay, great. And first of all, Luke could not have been more at ease. And I even said, like, this kind of reminds me of Mick early in the 2017-2018 year, where it's like, yep, that guy realizes he has a really good team. And so he just, at that stage, it's preseason, but there was a different sort of just casual vibe to him that I never really detected.
He was really comfortable in his own skin.
is really comfortable just answering questions about his team. I'm like, this dude knows he's got a good team. And which, by the way, I thought of that often during the season because I'm like, all right, this team's starting to wear the weight of expectation. And I thought Luke publicly, and from my understanding privately, really kind of handled that. I mean, it was after the Tulsa game where he's like, yeah, I didn't tell these guys to celebrate, man. Like, yeah, you could just tell, like, his team's kind of dealing with a heavy burden here. He doesn't need them. It doesn't need him screaming at him that they almost let Tulsa come back and win. I thought the way he handled that was great, but you do this long enough, you either get to know people or you get to know about people. And when somebody is in their position for as long as Luke has been in, 5 years is a really long time in college football. You hear who's a bad guy. You hear who's a good guy. I mean, you hear like, boy, you know what? This guy treats people like this, or man, this guy is an absolute prince, or here's some stuff this guy's doing that's not in public view. You find out those things. In 5 years, I have not heard anybody say that Luke Fickell is an ass, or boy, he's full of himself, or he treats people poorly, or you know what, he's in it for himself. I'm sure he has his moments where he's not at his best. I can't say that about that many people that I've talked about or been around. And I'm not going to, I don't know Luke as well as most, but you get to sort of find out pretty quickly who the good and bad guys are. My experience with Luke, but more importantly, with people who have spent a lot of time around Luke, is we're talking about a really good dude here. And I don't think taking a job makes you a bad person. I don't think leaving in a way that's maybe less than ideal makes you a bad guy. But I do think that the way potential job openings have been handled by Luke is reflective of the kind of person that I think we've all been led to believe that Luke is. So that's worth talking about. I mean, that's really worth talking about. And it makes it easier to root for these guys. I mean, I don't want to turn this into bashing other people, but like I wasn't a huge Butch Jones guy. I don't think Butch Jones did a terrible job here.
I think Butch Jones was a huge Butch Jones guy.
Right, but like Butch is kind of a punchline, and it's like, there's 2 of his 3 years there are pretty good. But I just there's just something about him that I got a bad vibe, and you could always tell when you publicly criticize somebody, not personally, but when you publicly criticize somebody, how many people rush to their defense, right? So with Butch, nobody ever rushed to his defense. And with Tommy Tuberville, I wouldn't get anybody that really rushed to his defense. That told me a lot. There have been other coaches that I've criticized publicly, and I pay attention to who rushes to their defense. There have been very few reasons to criticize Luke, but I get the sense that if and probably when it happens at some point, if he's here for a while, that I'll have a lot of folks that rush to his defense, and that speaks volumes.
I'm curious your take on this.
Uh-huh.
Do you think he wanted to be involved with the Notre Dame job? Personally, I think he would have liked to have at least explored that opportunity if possible. And if so, what do you think it says about him that when they reached out, it was essentially what we thought he would do, which is, I'm busy right now.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be a huge surprise if we found out he had no interest in being the subject of their interest? Like, right.
That would be more surprising than anything if he just flatly said, like, not interested.
So I had a lot of folks when I said this last Wednesday night that disagreed with me. And I said, the concern for me, and I think for most Bearcat fans, wasn't Luke is going to leave. Is the team's ability to play at their best against Houston going to be compromised by the rumors and whatever contact there may be between Notre Dame and Luke Fickell? How much of that is going to have an impact on a game that this team has to win? And does the scenario exist where this team plays in the college football playoff and they're not given the best chance to represent themselves because either Luke is coaching the team and his attention is divided, or it's an interim coach with a coaching staff filled with guys who either have one foot in South Bend, have one foot in their next jobs, don't know what their next gig is going to be. And the result is what we saw in New Orleans 12 years ago. If it's Luke leaves for Notre Dame after Cincinnati's played its final snap this year, I think most of us would go, yeah, okay. The question is, how much could it screw up Saturday, and how much of this could impact this team being at its best in the national semifinals if they get there? So I had a lot of people that said, well, no, it's actually about him leaving. I think the fact that, and I said this publicly, I can't tell you if he's going to go to Notre Dame or not. I can't tell you how much, to what degree Notre Dame is interested. I can't tell you to what degree Luke would be interested. I feel confident in saying this, that if he goes to South Bend, he will finish what he started in 2021. I believe that. And that to me was a reflection of what I've come to understand about Luke Fickell, that he may want to talk with Notre Dame. You're going to do it when I'm not as busy, and or Oklahoma as well. And so that might mean I talk to you after the Houston game. And if you want to wait, fine. If not, whatever. By the way, Luke Fickell has a pretty good job right now, and he probably can ask for and get whatever he wants. So, but I never really thought Luke was going to screw up the exit. I never really felt like Luke Fickell's going to leave a team 13-0, and on December the 31st, they're playing with an interim head coach and a bunch of coaches who don't know what they're going to be doing the next day. I never believed that was going to be the case. And Chad, I said this publicly as well, and this is not really related to your question, but I also said on my show a week and a half or so ago, I go, everybody's panicked and everybody's worried, but pay attention to the people who are really close to this. And this has more to do, I guess, with USC than Notre Dame, but pay attention to the Chad Brendels and the Justin Williams and people like that who are, writing and tweeting and putting their name on things, and they just don't seem to believe there's a lot of fire here when it comes to some of these openings. Now, the Notre Dame thing was admittedly a little bit different, but again, I would have been really surprised had he screwed up the exit if indeed he did leave. And as it turned out, he didn't have an exit to screw up.
Did not. So
well said.
Chad, do you have anything? I have some. I mean, I guess we do have some more Bearcat stuff. But I kind of have, that's kind of all I have from a football standpoint. And I have some other, I guess, not necessarily specifically to the football questions that I would like to talk to Mo about, since Chad and I kind of veer off topic from now and then. But I'll take this step. Your initial reaction to the Wes Miller guys in Norwood Xavier comments.
Awesome. Let's do it. Look, this rivalry is fun because it brings out pettiness in everybody. And among the more petty things that people could do is mispronounce Xavier and talk about it being in Norwood and not Cincinnati. If it bothers you, if you're a Xavier fan, you're taking this too seriously. And if you take what Wes Miller did and decide to make it your life's goal to mispronounce Xavier and nonstop mention that the school is in Norwood, then you're taking it too seriously as well. To me, it did two things. Number one, it was indicative of a coach who's willing to embrace the rivalry. I had not that many complaints about previous regimes, but if there was one that I had, it was, look, this game matters. This game matters to me. It matters to a lot of fans. It matters to people who care deeply about your program. Can you at least pretend like it's not a pain in the ass to you? We know coaches, it's different and it pulls them in directions they don't want to go, but can you at least pretend like this is not, oh my God, I'm going to the dentist. So I think it was nice as a UC fan. I think it was nice as a fan of the rivalry to see a coach who's willing to sort of pay slight homage to the fact that
Well,
this
yeah,
game is different.
Coach the last 2 years was a Xavier fan, so at
But
least
I
we
also,
have someone on our bench now that doesn't like the other team.
right. So the other thing I think it did is it put the onus on Wes Miller going into his first game at the Cintas Center, a game in which his team is going to be pretty significant underdogs, a game in which many of his players have never played in, where the talent disparity I think right now is pretty stark, and now the focus is on the coach. Great. I mean, to me, that's what a coach to a degree is supposed to do. So if those guys are yelling and screaming at Wes Miller and not Mason Madsen or David Julius or Jeremiah Davenport or whoever, if the focus is on the coach, great. I think I don't know if that's what he did on purpose, but to me, he's put the focus on him and maybe a little bit less on a group of guys that has a really, really uphill battle and is going to go into a situation which is obviously has been difficult for very good UC teams, much less ones that are still, kind of trying to find their way. So yeah, I was here for it. I'm here for anything which stokes the rivalry in a way that's not hostile. That wasn't hostile.
It's good for your business.
It's good for my business. And at the end of the day, it was benign. I mean, it's not worth getting mad about. It's nobody is threatening to go out there and punch somebody. I like anything that stokes the rivalry in a sort of fun and friendly way, and that's what it did. So sign me up for it.
But that's him, right? Like, this is a guy that played in the teeth of Carolina Duke, and with his personality, like, I think he likes to mix it up a little bit, and I think that's awesome for us. It's fantastic for us.
You have a very good seat for, I guess I'll say, all basketball games. What have you enjoyed watching of Wes in the beginning of the season? What have you learned? What kind of things have stood out from you just from watching him coach, how he interacts with the players, things of that nature?
Well, I'll preface this by saying I don't think there's any right way to do it, right? I mean, there's different styles for different coaches. Wes's is different, but he does seem to be able to connect with this group of guys. I think for the most part they've played their asses off for him. I think for the most part they've played very well together. I love the body language of the team on the bench. I love watching the body language of the guys as they interact with each other, and Wes is a part of that. It's been weird during some pretty tense moments to see him like joking with guys, but I don't know that he's going to handle every single team like that, but clearly, the job of a coach is to have a feel for the best way to handle individual players and the best way to handle groups of guys collectively. And it feels to me like Wes has a pretty good sense of that. I've seen him in huddles lose his mind. I've seen him, lose his mind at officials, but you get the sense, and, Chad, I've talked with you about this because you've been to practice. You get the sense that whatever criticisms he is aiming at a guy, at a player, there's nothing personal behind it. There's no animus. I'm sure he gets annoyed with some of these guys. I'm sure he has gripes with how well or hard some of these guys play, but you don't get the sense that when he's pissed, that is pissed at the person. Which is, that's not to say that anybody before him was, but I think that's abundantly clear with Wes Miller. And for the most part, and there have been exceptions. I didn't like much of how they played against Monmouth. I didn't like much of how they played against Miami. In spite of their massive offensive deficiencies, they've looked pretty cohesive. They look like they understand the schemes they're being asked to play in. They've responded to, he's played so many guys. There's a lot of dudes who don't get an overabundance of minutes. There's a part of me that wishes some of those guys would get pissed at that, especially in the front court. But I've liked most of what I've seen.
What is your kind of expectation for the group moving forward with this year? I know they played really well in Kansas City, and I think that got some people's attention and maybe heightened expectations, and they kind of, right after that, kind of slipped a bit. So I don't know if that readjusted expectations, but what are you kind of just looking for as a whole as we get, in a week, in about 2 or 3 weeks, conference play will start. So, moving forward.
I want to see.
I'm not looking forward to Houston.
I'm not looking forward to Houston at all. I am looking forward to seeing how this group of guys reacts to Houston on the road, especially again in the front court. I'm interested in finding out if by the end of the season, Jeremiah Davenport is indeed their best player. That sounds like a knock on JD, and it's not. I think JD is a good player, and potentially, as he was in the preseason, an all-league guy. But I think your ceiling is perhaps lower with JD as your best player than it would be if somebody else on the team emerged as that guy. I want to see if a front court player emerges as somebody who you kind of go, okay, among our bigs, this is the guy that we're not taking off the floor. And I think most of us are really interested in seeing if Victor Locke can become that guy, because on the list of pleasant surprises, he's probably at the top, and he looks so well coached, but he's got to continue to learn how to play, college basketball. And that's a pretty obvious statement, but if he can do that and add to what he's already done, then we're talking about a guy who could be a pretty formidable presence. I wonder how much the rotation is going to shrink, because you see it often in this sport, man. In November, early December, coaches are playing like 10 guys, and then we get to late January, they're playing 7, maybe 8. So does that happen with this team? And they haven't gone, and the atmosphere at Millett Hall was better than I think anybody ever expected. That was a fun. The game itself wasn't great, but that was fun. But like, what happens on Saturday when they have 10,000 people screaming at them, and they're getting, they're facing an 8-0 run by a team that has supreme talent, and it feels like the walls are caving in. How does this team respond? Who can get a bucket? Who can make a play? Who's willing to kind of stand up to the opposition? That to me is the interesting thing about Saturday, because we're expecting Xavier to win. We're expecting the atmosphere to be insane. We're expecting Xavier to impose its will. And okay, well, what happens if, the first 4 or 5 minutes, XU just punches them? Does this team just go, okay? Or does somebody step up and go, man, screw this? Because while there's not a ton of intimidating venues in the American Athletic Conference, there certainly are teams that from a talent standpoint are superior. How do they respond when they get sort of beaten around by a team that is superior? And they're thrust in atmospheres that are maybe not like what they get on Saturday, but are still pretty imposing.
Chad, do you have any other hoops questions?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. The thing for me is, can they figure out a way to not get pummeled at the guard and wing spots on the glass? Because that's really where this is happening. Like that Arkansas game, and this is how college sports work, that Arkansas game put it on tape that if you attack the offensive glass at the 1, the 2, and the 3, you can force this team into issues, especially if you have good length at the 2 and the 3. And what's the counter to that? Because I don't know what the counter to that is, Mo, because Cincinnati is a team that's trying to get out and run. So they're not as aggressively sending the numbers to the glass defensively that their opponents are now. Do you go all in on trying to figure out a way to defensive rebound? Or do you go all in on, when we get the defensive rebound, we're going to make them pay in transition and not get their defense set? So even if they get a bucket, we're going to get one back. Like, do you play tit for tat, or do you say we've got to find a way to batten down the hatches and be better on the defensive glass?
It just feels to me like their best bet is to just ugly it up, right? I mean, this is a Xavier team that has been shooting the ball from outside better than I think most expected. They had another good night tonight, close to 50%. It feels to me like if you're going to go tit for tat, you're inviting disaster, because this Xavier team is really good offensively. They can be really good offensively. And I think we thought that was going to be the case and thought they would be an okay 3-point shooting team. With the way Nate Johnson has shot it and with the way they've had success shooting the ball from three, if you're gonna go bucket for bucket, I just think that's a losing proposition. I feel like they have to make the game as gnarly and as ugly as possible, and that to me suggests you just got to go all in on the glass, and you can't give up second opportunities and just make it as ugly as possible. That seems to me to be their only hope. Offensively, this is a team with a limited ceiling. It's a team that doesn't have a lot of guys who are just going to, there's nobody right now that you can go, well, you know what, that guy's going to be good for 18 to 20, or that guy's going to be able to stop an 8-0 Xavier run by going and getting a bucket. I think you have to make this as just janky as possible. And, who knows what that does to the environment. I think if you get into a game that's more up and down, I think if you're a UC fan, you're expecting disaster. But by the way, I do think you can turn Xavier over. I mean, as good as well as they're shooting it, I do think, we saw it late in the game against Oklahoma State. They should have put Oklahoma State away, and they kind of let them back in a little bit because of turnovers. I think you can, if there's a way to kind of turn them over and then you can create some buckets off that, that's one thing. But I think you have to commit to rebounding the ball against this team.
I could not agree more. One word to describe Brian Kelly's basketball introduction comments at LSU.
Sad. Because this is a guy, it was sad to me because you felt the need to be so inauthentic, and why? Like, why?
Was it just like an accident from talking to people all day that it just became something? Like it's so like, it's so bad and so out of nowhere that I'm like, did he just like, did their Boudin and everything else just kind of seep into his pores from talking to them all day, or like what the hell was that?
I don't know. I felt in a weird way, I felt sorry for him because I feel bad who feel like they can't be themselves. And what I saw, what night was that? Was that Wednesday? Last one? I've lost track.
Yeah.
Whenever night that was, I remember just watching that going, A, boy, he sounds different. B, what reason does he have to decide to not be authentic? I know there's an element of phoniness to Brian Kelly that, okay, we've established and looked behind and looked past, and then has never even really bothered me, but why? And then I felt really bad for the LSU beat writers, who at some point are going to have to ask him about it, right? Like the next availability he has for signing day or announcing staff hires or whatever, spring ball.
I hope he plays it out. Like when they have the signing day press conference, we're happy to welcome all these new commits and signees to our family.
Now, if he's like, you know what, this is my new persona, I'm never going to address it, I'm just going to lean into it, and this is my accent moving forward, great. I mean, that to me would be the absolute best. But
Bayou Brian, I would just lean into it.
Right. But yeah, I thought it was kind of I laughed at it and I'm amused by it, but I just thought it was pathetic.
It's like, why do you even have to do that?
Right. Like, who are you trying to win over that you haven't already won over by being an already successful coach who's now the head coach at LSU? Like, who are you trying to win on your side, to get on your side? That, I guess that would encapsulate my thoughts.
I have one more question. We can let Mo out of here unless Chad has something else.
Go ahead.
Breaking news earlier today. Mine and yours, apparently, number one celebrity crush will be making her way to Cincinnati, Ohio on Sunday. I'm scrambling to think about how I'm going to, maybe get a ticket for the game.
Yeah.
Go to the Holy Grail if that happens. excitement level that Kay Adams will be of the NFL Network will be making her way to the Bengals game as the ruler of the jungle?
Well, first of all, great for the Bengals for getting her. Good for them. Huge Kay Adams fan. I love Good Morning Football. I like shows about football where I'm not getting yelled at and I'm not getting lectured to. And I feel like in that sport in particular, there's a little bit too much of that. I want to be informed. I want something that's informative. I'm even okay with you teaching me something, but boy, there's a lot of football conversation where it's either two people yelling at each other or yelling at me, the audience, or just talking down to me because they watched the tape. And it's like, can we just have some fun talking football? And that show does it. Plus, Kay Adams.
It really is a great show.
It is. And I'd be lying if I said I sit down every single morning and watch the whole thing, but like on while I'm, kind of getting my kid ready for the day and what I'm doing. Yeah, I have it on almost every single morning, especially during the season. And it's they can tackle some hardcore football stuff and some serious topics, but at the end of the day, it's fun talking about football, which I enjoy. And I think Kay's really good and probably my biggest celebrity crush, like you, Dave. So she's coming to the game. She tweeted that she's coming to the game as the ruler of the jungle. I retweeted her. I quote tweeted her. And so you should come to the Holy Grail where Tony and I are on the air from noon to 3 on Sunday before the game. And she instantly retweeted it and said, sure. So Kay Adams wouldn't lie. Kay Adams is a woman of her word. She wouldn't say that. She wouldn't, she could have said like, oh, I'll check my schedule or I'll see, or she said, sure. That says she's coming. So I expect to see Kay Adams Sunday at the Holy Grail.
I just like that she's like unapologetically taking on the Bengals. Is like, yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Where you don't see that from anybody in like the national media. They'll never let you know who they actually, might root for.
Sign me up for it. I'm in.
I do need to know how much more complete is your work-life balance now, knowing that you can take a day off and there's a pretty good chance your show's not going to get canceled. I'm not saying it's going to be good.
No.
There's a pretty good chance it's not going to be canceled.
Here's what you look for, okay? All right. Now, I don't determine who fills in, but there's two types from my standpoint, there's two types of fill-ins. There's the fill-in who, when they fill in, your phone doesn't vibrate with your friends going, dude, when are you coming back? Or who the hell's this guy? Or don't take any more days off. There's that fill-in, and then there's the fill-in who's on, and you kind of forget that there's a show without you on it. And that's what you are. Like, there have been fill-ins in the past where it's like, dude, I didn't pick them. I don't know. I'm out of town. Like, leave me alone. When you're on, my phone doesn't vibrate. That is the biggest compliment that I could pay, because there have been times where I've like dreaded, like, I mean, I'll feel my phone sort of going crazy, and it's like 3:20, and it's like, yep, oh yeah, well, I guess I'm on. The show's on right now. Okay, yeah. So yes, I drastically appreciate the fact that when you're on, my off day doesn't get ruined inside. I mean, there have literally been times where I'm like, all right, I guess I'll have to go on the app and see what's going on, and it's like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, sorry, I'll tell my boss. That never happens when you're on. Yeah, that never happens when you're there, which is great.
Well, I appreciate that. Those are very kind words. I just wanted to get a dig in it myself, and you were far too kind.
I do what I can.
All right, that's Mo Egger. Thanks, Mo. We appreciate you coming on.
All right, guys. My wife just texted me and said, "When are you done?" Which, by the way, not the first time she's asked me that question.
If you want to stay longer
through text,
when is that? Actually, I cleaned up the "when are you done?" So better see what's happening upstairs.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
All right, guys. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
That's Mo Egger, Cincinnati's ESPN 1530-6, and every once in a while he takes a day off and I get to work. It was very kind of him. He didn't have to be that kind.
To take a day off or to join us?
No, to say the nice things he said about it. To join us as well, because we got a long time before New Year's Eve, man.
Well, I reached out the other day and almost instantly he was like, absolutely. So
yeah, this was Dave Dave didn't even consult. It's Mo, so of course I'm gonna say, Dave just sent me a text on like Monday that's like, or Sunday or Monday, I don't remember. Mo's on Wednesday. All right, perfect. Let's do it.
Yes, and we think we have our setup for next week. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it, because if we do the number that they talked about, we're not going to be able to do it on StreamYard because there's a limited number of people you can have at a time. I'm going to try to work something out with them to see if we can maybe have like a rotating group, like one group this time to this time, and then the next group comes in at the next time. But we're working with the Cincinnati Letterman's Club, Cincinnati Football Letterman's Club, and we're going to do a roundtable with former players next week. So I prefer to do it on StreamYard because I like Aaron's killing the game, dude. What do you think?
Oh yeah,
we get stats that pop up. We get like visual aid, visual representation here.
We look
on the
semi-professional.
Video. We look semi-professional. We had the number 11 afternoon drive, mid-market afternoon drive host in the country as a guest. So we're doing big things here at Bearcat Journal. I've got a whole new setup on order.
Did you have any luck with our possible guest?
I have a number.
Oh, well, buddy.
I have a number. Tough part is that's going to be Christmas week.
Oh yeah, it is.
So we might have to.
But it's still like it's only like the 21st or 22nd.
Right. So we'll figure something out. 22nd,
depending on when, basketball and stuff like that. But
right.
I didn't necessarily forget, but to ask Mo this, but I figured you and I can have this conversation. Okay. Your thoughts on Kirk Herbstreit just getting vaporized for his just asinine comment about conspiracy theories being dead and it being quiet now because UC is in the playoff. Like,
he got what he deserved.
But how just, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what the word is. Like,
how can that guy be that tone deaf?
It's just it's unbelievable that that's what you take away from UC making the playoff, is that like now all of a sudden it's going to be a free for all of G5 teams lining up to make the playoff every year. Like I guarantee you, I will put whatever amount of money on it that from this year to whenever the playoff expands, no other G5 team will make the playoff.
Look, what did this take? This took a team to get the benefit of a pandemic, Dave.
Yeah.
To be able to get this number of guys who just narrowly missed out on a massive bowl win last year. Like, think if they beat Georgia.
Before that, it took last year to even start.
Yeah, all of last year.
So look at the G5 teams this year. Which one of them are set up to do that, to run this year into next year?
None. It took all of those guys losing that game and deciding to run it back. Dave, if they beat Georgia,
or if they lose by 30.
Yeah, or if they lose by 30. Like, this team looks drastically different. You've got fifth-year guys, sixth-year guys, four-year starters, guys that played impacted the program for 5 and 6 years. All of that had to go right in the offseason, right?
Yeah.
They had to make it through this season undefeated. They had to make it through this season basically like injury-free so that nothing crazy happened. They did that. And then they needed everybody but the SEC and Big Ten to put like the ACC was out. The Big 12 was out.
Pac-12.
The Pac-12 was out.
Yeah.
a second Big Ten team was out. Notre Dame couldn't get in.
They needed to schedule
somebody other than
two
Cincinnati.
What I'm saying, UC needed to schedule two teams that they hoped would be good X number of years down the line, and then them actually be good at the same time.
Well, Indiana ended up not being good, but
but that didn't hurt them. But you know, they needed to be able to schedule someone, them actually be good, beat them, but then them not lose any more games.
Yeah.
So not be good, but not good enough to, jump back over them.
And all of those things had to come together.
And they still, in my mind,
finished fourth.
Finished fourth and still needed dude from Oklahoma State to come up like 2 inches short of the pylon. And then for him to come out and say that is like, while he's the mouthpiece of
the sport, the whole sport.
ESPN and the playoff are intertwined. Like they're this not the same thing, but like they're not working in cahoots, but they're like they have stuff to do with each other. They're not independent of each other.
Right. It was ridiculous. I mean, it was such a tone deaf, and thankfully, like Twitter can be good for that sometimes. When somebody says the dumbest shit possible and everybody's like, hey, that was some dumb shit.
That was really stupid.
So, I'm glad he got ratioed. Joe wants to know the bus trip. No. I put it on the message board and said, how many are coming? And I think 3 people responded. So, it was going to cost between $10,000 and $12,000 out of my pocket to book the bus.
You're much nicer than me.
And I was only going to do that if I was for certain that we were going to get 50 members. Maybe I could have brought some sponsors in if we got like 30 or 40. But with 3, it seemed like probably a more fiscally responsible thing to do was to just drive.
That's what I'm doing. We're hitting Memphis the night of the 29th, and then on to Dallas on the 30th.
I would love to do that, but I'm in for. Well, we're going to leave on the 29th, but it's probably going to be an all night deal. Yeah, like I'm in for Mo. I'm in for Mo on the 29th. So
I do want to say, after going to fan council last night, we have had a huge number of people request tickets to Dallas, but only about half of those requested tickets to the national championship game. And everybody just needs to know that if that happens, those tickets do not go back to UC to then sell you. You have to request them now. And if you've already made your request for the Cotton Bowl through like your season ticket portal, because there's a season ticket portal and a general public portal. If you've already made the request for Dallas through the season ticket portal, but did not request national championship tickets, you now have to go into the general public portal and request them that way. So it's not like if they were to upset Alabama that UC is going to have a bunch of tickets to sell you for the national championship. Those go back to the national championship, whatever is not requested.
Important information. You should put that on Twitter.
And that deadline is Friday.
You should put that on the Twitterers.
I will do my best.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a ton else. I think we allowed Mo to carry the show today.
Signing day next Wednesday.
Yes.
Will we get any surprises? Please tell me there'll be a surprise. I'm tired of boring signing days.
I won't rule out a surprise, but there are still some things that are possible that I don't know the timeline on.
Okay.
So it would be a matter of would any of those things that are still possible play out through all the way to signing.
If I gave you an over-under of 2.5 guys that are not currently committed to UC, would you take the over or the under for next Wednesday?
Probably the under.
Probably the under.
Probably. I'm not going to say definitively, but probably. I think 2 is the number. I think they can get 2 more. And a third is possible, but there's some moving parts in that decision on the third.
I was sad to see that DeColdest is apparently visiting Texas this weekend.
Not great.
Not if
Maybe there's still time. We're not to.
Yeah, he could wait
to Friday yet.
He could wait. Well, he could also wait to sign until February.
Yeah, he could.
That's not out
There's
of the question.
the commits, the rank. Do you ever think you'd see going a week from signing day they'd be in the top 30, Dave?
Well, what did I say? Didn't I make some stupid guarantee that they would finish in the top 30 during the summer when they went on their big run of commits?
I think, yeah.
And then it looked like it wasn't going to happen because they didn't get some of the higher targeted recruits, but
then they circled around and found other higher targeted.
There's still a lot of volatility that can happen.
Yeah,
you just don't. We don't keep track of other schools, so we have no idea if someone's about to add 10 commits or something.
And you have no idea if somebody that's above Cincinnati is about to lose half of their signing class.
Right.
So,
Joe wants to know if we think Luther Richardson could challenge for a starting spot day one.
No.
I do not think so.
I think it would have been interesting if he was going to early enroll and go through spring football and see where that put him heading into the summer. But that's not happening. He's going to continue training down in Nashville, and he'll be here in the summer. So, no, I don't think so. The interesting question is, we've had what now, Dave? 3 years where we haven't really seen, Sauce is the last freshman to really, force his way into, Mason Fletcher, obviously.
And that was really only out of necessity because of the style of offense UCF ran.
Right, and then they just couldn't keep him off the field from there.
But that's what I'm saying. Anybody else, though, they wouldn't have needed to put him on the field.
Right, he never would have gotten on the field to be where they can't take him off the field. It'll be interesting to see, if there's more of this class. Who's the freshmen this year that have contributed? Mason Fletcher and Byron Threats?
Have there been any on all the special teams?
Not like we've seen.
Other than Threats?
I think Threats is the main one. Not really anything that we've seen in years past. And some of that is just because so many of these veteran guys are also they made their way onto the field on special teams and they just never left.
Well, they're your best players in college. Yeah. The higher end teams play a lot of their best players on special teams.
So it'll be interesting to see if there's a wave of freshmen in this class, this 2022 class that can maybe make an impact.
I think there'll just be more opportunity.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I was getting at. There hasn't been opportunity in 2 years for young guys really to push their way up the roster. And now that you have a bunch of transition, there are guys in line to move up the roster, right? But they're not dedicated, started 30-game veterans. If somebody can come in and push them, somebody can come in and legit make a push. And I do think you're going to see a lot of them Not a lot, but you're going to see a few of them find their way on special teams onto the field.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but you're not hitting the reset button, but you're hitting like the you're respawning prior to your last mission in video game terms.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's still going to be talent on this team, but I would.
Yeah, of course. That's not what I'm saying.
I would say we're hitting the reset button next year.
We'll see.
Based on where that talent is leaving from.
Agreed. It is going to be very difficult. That, like, the hardest thing I think is finding the guys that who are going to be the guys that command the locker room.
Right. Because you had Kobe and Dez for 5 years.
Right.
That's not easy to just automatically just replace.
I don't know that I've ever seen a player do what Kobe did in the East.
Pull everybody together?
Yeah, like the entire defense. There wasn't a player that wasn't standing around Kobe.
Yeah.
Like after the second drive, when Houston went straight down the field twice, they got a field goal and a touchdown. And Kobe Bryant pulled all of them. Like, usually you sit in your position groups, your coach comes over if they're on the field, you go through some things, you're trying to straighten things out, figure what you got to do, all that stuff. And Kobe was having none of that. Like, all of you on me right now, let's talk. And outside of the officiating assisted touchdown in the second half, they scored 3 points from that point on.
Mm-hmm.
3. That's the type of leadership that is developed, right? Like, that's the type of respect over 5 years that Kobe Bryant has earned.
Yeah, like, it's hard to, I don't want to say it's not possible, but like, who commands that next year if a moment like that comes up?
Right.
And who is on the roster next year that can do that? I'm not saying there isn't going to be someone. It's just
we don't know who it is.
Unknown right now.
Yeah.
Luke is asking about the chances of Josh Wiley, Leonard Taylor, Jerome Ford returning next year. I would say those conversations are probably going to be ongoing between now and the Cotton Bowl, and it's just not something that we would have knowledge of on those 3 guys at this point.
Best case, I would think you get one of the 3 back, one of the tight ends. If I had to guess which, I would probably guess Lenny, just because he would get a chance to come back and be like the feature tight end to help improve his positioning. I think Wiley and Ford are gone. There have been some rumblings about Ford. I don't see it, man. Go get your money.
Yeah, I'm for, as much as I'm a UC fan, I am always for these guys capitalizing as early and as quickly as they can.
Yeah, the thing for tight end is we talked about it with Jim Nagy. This is a very deep tight end draft.
Yeah.
So if both of them go, like, the odds are one of them is fighting to get drafted.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance if Lenny comes back, he could greatly improve his stock, especially when you're probably dealing with a quarterback that's going to need a safety valve more often, more frequently than
but that again also could be a reason to leave, is you're dealing with an offense that you don't know how it's going to be. And, there's always the injury possibility. There's a lack of production possibility. I mean, it's a hard decision that these guys have to weigh. And I mean, they'll get as much info as they can, but there's info. And then there's, once you're in the draft process, info. Like,
But also, once you're in the draft process, you can't come out.
No.
There's no turning back. So if you're going to get that info, you better be damn sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you make the over? Oh, we talked about that on the after.
Yeah, I can't even remember at this point.
All right. Well, I guess.
Well, you're. Do you think? Have you had any conversations? Have you heard anything? Obviously, they added the transfer kicker. We've talked a lot about an edge presence in the transfer portal, but that's kind of like offensive line. If you're good and you're transferring at edge or offensive line, everybody's going to want you.
Right.
Is there any other? Have you heard anything? Any rumblings on any other possibilities? Not players, but
not really at this point. I mean, yeah, they're obviously looking for an edge. I think they're always looking for a tackle. I think you're gonna have to look in the defensive secondary, just to see what you can, see if there's somebody with some experience and some ability that you can look at. If Ford goes, do you look at running back potentially? Some of it, I think, will depend on how the signing class finishes out, how many spots they can use, where they can be aggressive. So I still think a lot of that story is being written.
We definitely have an abundance of interior guys on both lines.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is, like, if you're Pat Lambert and Max and that crew, life's pretty good right now. I get the sense there's a whole lot of kids.
You mean to tell me there's some kids that they might have been interested in before that are committed elsewhere that might now be showing some interest in the college football playoff bound number 4 team in the country, Cincinnati Bearcats?
Or maybe some kids they've never talked to until like this week, or
like Dakotas.
Yeah, Dakotas. Like, I'm guessing they weren't heavily recruiting Dakotas before. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, how this final 1 week plays out, because signing day is a week from today. So yeah, buckle up. You got Jackson Brown coming in this weekend. I think there might be one other. We'll see. It's not going to be Jordan Allen.
No.
He's going to be becoming part of someone's family.
Yeah. But
before we left, I wanted to get Aaron on, give him a big round of applause.
Hey.
You StreamYard like 2 hours before the show.
Pretty much.
And you did a wonderful job, sir.
I appreciate that.
So this is kind of going to be Aaron's new focus with us moving to StreamYard. Whether he's on the show, and I'm guessing when it's just me and Dave, you'll be on a lot more than when we have a guest. But sure. Then you're on the BBP and you're on part of the punctuation. And we'll see if we're going to go this route with the nightcaps. I don't know if it makes sense going live for 8 minutes. But
we could still record through StreamYard, though.
We can still record to mess around with all the stuff. So Aaron's new main responsibility is going to be the official BCJ network producer, except for PTP, because then you're not the producer.
Yeah, I'm steering the boat on that one. So
who all from the crew will be at the Cotton Bowl?
I'll be there.
I'll be there. Brent will be there. Brian will be there. We're rolling 4 deep.
Oh, buddy.
I just ordered you guys some Christmas presents.
Count.
Hey.
I don't count.
Well, you're not credentialed. You're not going to get because you haven't asked to be.
Can I drink beer?
No. No.
I can't go back and forth.
Dave.
I mean, I do kind of want to be on what access do you get with the credentials?
Depends on what credential you get
for this type of a game.
My guess is I will have field access and then access to the photographer's work/hospitality area. Aaron and Brent will have press box access.
Well, I'd like field access, please.
I've already got 2 of those, and I don't think that that's going to happen.
So I can just jump the fence of the little hospitality suites that are on the field level. Just get a beer, drink it real quick, jump right back out.
Good luck.
I'm not having anybody on my I'm afraid if they kick one of us out, that all of us are probably going to have to go. Think you're better. Think you're better in the stands.
I know. I am. Believe me. I want this is a long-standing relationship. We know Dave does not work at football games.
Nor would we expect him to.
It would mess things up. I mean, we've got a good.
The
thing
whole
going.
karma would be off if you were working.
Yeah.
So.
Are you all traveling together? Are you getting like a BCJ conversion van?
No.
My mom and her boyfriend are driving down. I'm hopping along with them, and they'll be at the game, and I'll be up in the press box.
I'm driving down with my pops.
I hope they have some good media food for you guys.
I would expect high quality media food.
It's Jerry's word.
Everything we've heard about the Cotton Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Like everyone says, that is the king of the mountain on bowl games. Like if you're gonna bowl game, you're gonna Cotton Bowl. So I'm pretty excited about the media food.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm excited to get down there.
Just you and that's right. You, Rachel, and the little one are going.
Yeah.
And then the little one is staying with your friends while you and Rachel go to the game, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up. We're going to do something out of the ordinary here and maybe take a day off. We'll still have content. Cookies. Good stuff for tomorrow.
Cookies. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there'll be treats.
Look at our diehards that stayed on for almost 2 hours. You know.
That's why you say that stuff at the end.
I know.
That's why you say that stuff at the end. But thanks everybody for joining in.
Legacy cookies.
Thanks everybody for joining in with us live for our first time. We'll see how long it takes me to figure out the process of getting the audio up. I'm guessing that might not be as smooth a process as it has been in the past, but we'll get it figured out. But and to everybody that watches now, because these are now going to be on YouTube immediately after the show. So when we get done, you'll have instant access to watch the video of everything going forward. So thanks to everybody for tuning in.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that stuff on the YouTube.
Like, subscribe, unsubscribe,
Resubscribe.
unsubscribe, resubscribe.
Yeah.
It's good for the algorithm. That's what you got to do. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you to producer extraordinaire in training, Aaron Smith. I thought you had like one of those like rookie debuts where you had like 2 doubles and a home run.
I'm good with that.
I'm proud of you.
That's a heck of a rookie debut.
Right? Like first time in the bigs, gets a couple knocks, hits a dinger. Feeling pretty damn good about himself. Usually those guys you never hear from again after like their 4th game. So
8 total bases is a pretty good game for anyone.
All right. We'll see you next time. I'm Chad Brendel. He's Dave Simone and Aaron Smith. This is the Holy Grail BCJ podcast right here on BearcatJournal.com.